But one second.
But you want to start from the beginning? Start from the beginning.
Yeah. Okay. I was just saying briefly before we started taping that I'm going to be talking, of course, about Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, Iran, um, and maybe Israeli politics as well. Um, an important thing that's very interesting is that there are two generals who have just retired from the Israeli army, and so we're watching that very, very closely. We have a system of rotation in the Israeli army top circles, and so Netanyahu, I think, is very wise in not firing anyone because he knows the dates on which people have to retire. Then if they retire, there's no reason to fire them. Same applies to the chief of staff, Herzi Halevi. Yesterday, the commander of the Judea and Samaria Central Command retired. We're watching. There are a number of people who are retiring. We have another commander. I don't remember his name offhand. Aaron, you have to help me with this. What's the name of this guy who was, they were trying him for firing his tank at a house and supposedly killing hostages or Israelis, and then it turns out that those who died were killed by Hamas, by bullets. Hiram, you know the name?
Hiram is the last name, yeah.
Huh? Anyway, it seems like we will be enjoying some new commanders coming into the army, and we're hoping that they will be able to work in a non-political manner, because as we've discussed many, many times in the past, there's a lot of politics at the top in the Israeli army, and Israeli soldiers on lower levels are just very, very unhappy, very upset with the petty politics of the generals following an agenda dictated from Washington. So meanwhile, the Israeli army is hammering away in Gaza. Yesterday, I don't think you get this in your media in the States, but yesterday, the Israeli military discovered a 3-level tunnel going into Egypt. Not just a tunnel, but it's like 3 levels. And so part of the negotiations now for a ceasefire is that Egypt will control the border area between Gaza and Egypt. But the problem is that the Egyptians have been all along from day one part of the conspiracy to supply Hamas and attack Israel. So there are a lot of people in Israel saying, no way, Jose. And we're still sending teams to negotiate with the Egyptians about it the day after. But we're finding tunnels every day. And the terrorists are popping out of their shafts under the ground and killing us, and we're killing them. Our presence in Gaza is going to take quite a while until we purge the area of the Hamas terrorists. And then hopefully, eventually, we get the hostages out and we destroy Sinwar and his brother and Mohammed Deif. These are the 3 big bad guys left that we have to catch and destroy. At the same time, we are not in an offensive ground war with Lebanon yet. I think we're focusing on continuing to grind Gaza, grind it down. Though at any moment a war with Lebanon could break out, America is threatening Israel lest it consider taking out the Lebanese Hezbollah. So we may or we may not do it in the near future, but the word is, and we've discussed this in the past few weeks, that at this stage, we're talking about a date sometime in late July for this war to break out with Lebanon. Meanwhile, Israel is continuing to have some very good intelligence, and we are taking out the Hezbollah terrorists, pretty important guys in the Hezbollah system, and these are people are responsible for shelling Israel with the massive rockets and missiles being fired at Israel. Interestingly enough, I think it's fair to say that there are people in Israel who are beginning to stop complaining. People who live up on the Lebanese border, and they realize that Israel has to finish Gaza first, then it has to take out as much of the infrastructure of Hezbollah terrorists, missiles, and whatever they have which could threaten Israel. So that actually is going to be the second front. And that is supposed to happen sometime before the end of July, which is, we are now entering the middle of July. So we're watching. We have also heard that Iran is now mobilizing its forces, proxy forces in Syria. That's another front. So the Syrian terrorists, or shall I say Iraqi Syrian terrorists, who are proxies of Iran, are planning to attack Israel across the Golan Heights. So that's another front. So we're watching that too. I've said this many times. Israel is facing a war which is kind of parallel to pickup sticks. And the first pickup stick, which has pretty much been destroyed, is Hamas in Gaza. The second pickup stick is either Lebanon, Hezbollah, or Iran. It might be that we will go to war with Lebanon, Hezbollah, and Lebanon, Hezbollah is also encouraging its proxies in Syria and Iraq. That's the fourth front we may be fighting. Also, today, a UAV drone from east of Israel, probably Iraq, flew into Israel and was taken down by the Israeli Air Force. So we're fighting indeed to defend ourselves from Iraq and from Syria. I would say, that at this stage, everything is quiet before the major explosion with Iran and with Hezbollah. I don't think that a war with Egypt is imminent yet, but Egypt is also arming itself for a major war with Israel. So we're watching Egypt very, very much also. And now in Israel, there's a lot of talk of Israeli military building itself up, because going into this war, we had 300,000 soldiers when we should have had 600,000 soldiers. And the former chiefs of staff, Gantz and Eisenkot, and also Kochavi, they kind of chopped the army down quite a bit, claiming that they believed in a small but smart army. So basically what happened was we got a small but stupid army, which is not able to defend itself with all these fronts. And Hamas has pulled the wool over our eyes. It's not easy for us. And a lot of young Israeli military reservists are now suffering a lot, because every time they go home for a few days, they get pulled up again to go back to the front. We just don't have enough soldiers. As for Israeli politics, things are a little shaky at this time. And there is fear in Israel of new elections. There is fear of the collapse of the coalition government of Netanyahu. Those people responsible for the instability are saying, no, we won't bring down the Israeli government. Ben Gvir and Smotrich. But I think what we're looking at is a repetition of Israeli history, where ultra right-wing parties are guilty of bringing down right-wing governments. And it's not the first time that this has happened. And so, we're hoping that Netanyahu can stay in power, continue doing what he has to do. Everybody's pulling in a different direction. Everyone wants a part of the pie. Our Homeland Defense Minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, wants to be like a minister. He's a minister already, but he wants to be in the inner cabinet, which was disbanded. And Netanyahu is not really happy about bringing him into such an inner cabinet. And Aryeh Deri from the ultra-Orthodox Shas party is fighting with Itamar Ben-Gvir to get certain laws passed, which Deri wants, the Shas party wants. And Itamar Ben-Gvir is saying, no, as long as I'm not part of the inner cabinet, I'm not going to support it, I'm not going to support the government. So there's a lot of ego problems here going on in the middle of a war. So this is something we're going to be watching in the next few weeks also. Israel supposedly is going into its summer recess for the Knesset, our Congress. I don't know yet if it's going to happen or not, if the Knesset will be extended, or if Netanyahu will just have to keep plugging along, constantly finding ways to disarm the ticking time bombs being set off by these other right-wing ministers who put their ego first and not the good of the government or good of the people. I will say that if the government does fall, Israeli governments do not fall because of pressure from the outside. Israeli governments fall because of pressure from the inside. So we are here in Israel, those of us who are part of my party, the Bible Blood Party, and we are ready to start campaigning for a new election if it happens. Though for us, life would be a lot easier if people would leave Netanyahu alone and let him do the work that he has to do. I think pretty much that's the situation we're facing here. If there are any questions, I'll be glad to entertain them. I know Susan always has questions. Anyone who wants to ask a question, unmute yourselves. Also, another point, I'm looking at the picture of my dear son. There is an area in the south of the Judean Hills called Novev, and this area has been proven to have a very important archaeological discovery. But what happened over the last 20 years is that the Arabs come in with money from the Europeans, and they basically destroy the archaeological proof of Israel's existence during the time of the Bible, which is not something that makes us very happy. And the Supreme Court in Jerusalem is backing the Arabs every time. So there are things that are just not going well or going right for Israel because of treason in the top ranks of our Supreme Court. So we're watching that. Another very important point is that, I don't know if you've been following this in the States, but in France, they had the second round of the elections, and Macron, the president of France, made a deal with the extreme left and with the Muslims to block the right-wing party in France from having any part in the government. So they had their victory, but it's a Pyrrhic victory, and I predict we will see fighting in France very soon, fighting in the streets. The new Prime Minister of France, who got elected to get with the help of Macron, is talking about recognizing the Palestinian state and working to basically force the Jews in France, 450,000 Jews, to flee. And so we see I don't know, I believe we see signs that very soon there will be tens of thousands of French Jewish people moving to Israel. England, as you all know, had its election and the Labour Party won. Labour Party in England is centrist. It's not overly anti-Semitic. But the Justice Minister in this new English government is Palestinian and anti-Israel. And I think they're going to recognize Palestinian state too. So things on the surface do not look very good. But as I've said previously, I think we're looking at a tremendous aliyah, or immigration to Israel of Jewish people. And I don't remember who it was. Some very important person in the Knesset said that we have to recognize the Christians who are moving to Israel and they're part of Jewish families, and to encourage them to convert to Judaism. The problem is within the Jewish leadership, there are people who do not want people to convert to Judaism. They don't want the Jewish people to be diluted by non-Jews. I think that's totally wrong. I think that if anyone wants to convert to Judaism, they should be welcome to do so and encouraged to do so. So that's something we're watching also. But we do know that there are going to be many, many Jews moving to Israel from America, from Canada, from France, from England, Italy, from Germany. So in that sense, I'm very optimistic. And like I said many, many times previously, I believe that the Bible Bloc Party only now will start growing in a radical manner as these non-Jews come to Israel. Some convert, some don't convert, doesn't matter. Those who believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are divided into Jews and Christians. But it's the same God, same Bible, Messiah as a Jew. So I'm living the history of Israel, modern day Israel here while I'm here. I really would like to come to the States and do the work that I've always been doing. But it looks like I'm here, especially if the war with Lebanon looks like it's brewing still and will probably erupt in the end of July. And probably this war will take a month or two also. So as long as I'm here and alive and well, we'll have these Zoom meetings on Tuesdays. That's in addition to Brand Fricker's God's Learning channel in Odessa, Texas. And of course on, okay, one second. What are your thoughts on Syria and Turkey getting friendlier with each other? Okay, that's a beautiful question. A little bit difficult to answer. Turkey is a Sunni Muslim country. Syria was a Sunni Muslim country, but as you all know, millions of Sunnis were expelled from Syria, and this caused the anger of the Turks. Now, on the other side, and both of them are enemies of Israel. On the other side is Iran, which also is an enemy of Israel. They're Shiites. And Lebanon and Syria are divided up into different ethnic groups. We see Shiite, Sunnis, Druze, and Christians, different types of Christians. And if you think Jews are divided against themselves, you see what's going on in Lebanon and in Turkey. And of course, eventually it's going to be in Iran also. So Turkey, I would not be surprised if Turkey one day invaded Syria. It already has its proxies in Idlib. Idlib is the northwest of Syria, and these are fanatic Sunnis who are really like ISIS members. So they are supposedly under the protection, quote unquote, of Turkey. Bashar al-Assad simply cannot destroy them. So the Turks said, leave them alone. They'll be under our aegis, and we'll make sure that they don't make trouble for the Shiites in Syria. But Iran is now massively organizing to send volunteers from Iraq and Iran into Lebanon. So we're watching this very carefully. You know, we have a number of tinderboxes And praise God, though at a high cost of 700 soldiers, we have pretty much eliminated Gaza as an enemy. But we're now looking at Lebanon. In Lebanon, unlike Gaza, in Gaza the enemy is a Sunni Muslim enemy. In Lebanon, they are Shiites, with some Sunnis marching with them. Hezbollah Shiite, backed by Shiite Iran. Syria is Shiite at this time, the leadership. And so we're watching to see how it all works out with Turkey, which is Sunni. So the Turks also have a problem with the Kurds in the eastern part of the country. The Kurds are also Sunni, but they are not Turks, and they are fighting the Turkish. Many of them are fighting the Turkish government. So that's something that bears watching. I was in the middle of answering a question, and I don't remember what the question was, but here's Neil Johnson. The city of Eilat was recently reported as having been successfully attacked by terrorist missiles. Today, the Israeli, thank you, Neil. Today, the Israeli military took out two UAVs, two drones, which never made it to Eilat. They were taken down by the Israeli Air Force, which is a good thing. And so the Israeli Air Force is now beginning to get some good training on how to deal with these missiles, or rather these drones. So, you know, we're, like I said before, we're living every day, day by day. And for those of us here in Kedar, we're very happy that our little tiny community here in Judea doesn't really interest anyone. So we're not being hit by missiles. The only thing is, yes, we are afraid one day of an ISIS-type terrorist overrunning of our community. And so we are here and praising the Lord and passing the ammunition. Thank you, Neil. Any other questions? Lori always has questions.
You answered my question on Syria and Turkey.
Oh, well, you have only one question?
Well, my other question I was thinking of was, I'm really curious about the hostage families, because we hear different things about groups of the hostage families, you know, how they're holding up and their different ideologies.
Yes. Well, the hostage families are pretty much divided up into two groups. One, which does not want to get involved in the politics of overthrowing Netanyahu's coalition and government. And the other one, which is with the ultra-left. The ultra-left has come on board with very, very big budgets to disrupt the country and disrupt the Likud and disrupt the coalition. So Channel 14, which is the nationalist and religious channel, which is what we watch, they're constantly speaking to members of families of the abducted, the hostages, who are not with the ultra-left anarchists, using the hostages as useful idiots for their devices. So, you know, our hearts are always bleeding for our hostages. We want them home. The latest news yesterday, according to Hezbollah, not Hezbollah, to Hamas, was that of all the 120 hostages, only 18 are left alive. So we really don't know who's alive, who's not alive. And Hamas is using this uncertainty as far as numbers as their secret weapon, psychological weapon, to make life very unpleasant for us. Frankly, I don't think Netanyahu is going to release hundreds of terrorists for 18 prisoners. So we're watching that. We'll have to see how that develops. Many generals on the right, who we see on the TV, are constantly talking about the only way to get the hostages out is to plaster the Hamas, find all these top Hamas leaders and kill them. So I see from Andrew Joy to everyone, Red Heifer update. I really don't think there's any update on the Red Heifer. The political situation does not allow for the building of a temple yet, or Red Heifer sacrifices. And as I've said in the past, it's a very interesting question. Both Jews and Christians are split right down the middle as to those Jews and Christians who support animal sacrifice, red heifers, and those who oppose it. In other words, there are Jews and Christians who oppose animal sacrifices. Jews oppose it. Some Jews oppose it because after the fall of the temple in the year 70, Yochanan ben Zakkai, who was the chief rabbi at the time, said, well, if there's no more temple and there's no more sacrifices, prayer, penitence, and charity replace the sacrifices. And Christians, were saying, well, we don't need it anymore because Jesus Christ is the ultimate sacrifice, so we don't have to go back to animal bloodletting. But then on the other hand, there are Jews and Christians who say, well, it has to happen, it's in the Bible. Christians say, well, the Antichrist cannot show up without red heifers being sacrificed. I'm having a senior moment with the words. It'll pop up in a moment. The abomination leading to the desolation. So there are many Christians who say there has to be a temple, there has to be animal sacrifices for that to happen. And then there are Jewish people who say that we have to either destroy the mosque or build on it and create a Jewish house of prayer for all nations. And of course, the Arabs will never agree to that. So the red heifer for now is on ice. Any other questions?
I got a question, but it's not about Israel. You always had good opinions about our politics. And what do you think about our election? What's going to happen? I know you've had good opinions, and in the past you were right about it.
Well, personally, my son is online here with us, and he helped me to vote, and he voted. We all supported Trump. Trump got 100,000 votes from Israeli voters, 100,000 votes. I don't know if they were counted or if they were not counted. I know that Pennsylvania, for example, sent out 180,000 ballots, and they got back 280,000 ballots. So somebody was stuffing the ballot boxes. There's a lot of dishonesty among the Democrats. Trump should have been president all along.
Oh, yeah.
So, I support Trump. I believe that the future of America depends on a Republican presidency, a Christian presidency, a conservative constitutional presidency, and we'll have to see. Now, one of the things I've been worried about is a red flag incident in which the Democrats declare martial law. And if the Democrats declare martial law, we may be seeing civil war in America. Now, obviously, I don't want a civil war in America. I love America too much. But if it's God's plan for a civil war, so that, like in France and in England, the Jews will flee, and many Jews will have to flee and move to Israel. So we'll have to see where the elections go. We'll have to see where this campaign goes. I see Angela McGill. I obviously do think that certain elements. Can you repeat it? Because I was answering the question, so I didn't have time to. There were two questions actually that came in.
Hi, Avi. It's Angela from Jersey.
Hey,
in the Channel
Angela.
Islands. Right.
Listen, Jersey, the islands
Yeah.
of Jersey, is a great place. I was there. You hosted me.
Yeah.
I love you very much.
I love you too.
Just don't say New Jersey.
New Jersey. I know I can't say that without looking stupid.
New Jersey. Yes,
Well,
Angela.
well, I was kind of wondering. I read there was demonstrations again outside the Prime Minister's home at the weekend, and I was thinking, with everything that's going on with the elections in the US, do you think they think it's kind of their last chance to unseat Bibi, and there could be interference from the Democratic Party, certain elements within Israel agitating for this, actively wanting him gone?
Well,
Before,
I think it's fair to say that the Israeli public, the majority of the Israeli public supports Trump.
yeah,
And the majority of the Israeli people and government understand that President Biden and all those in the Democratic Party do not have Israel's interest at heart.
no, yeah,
So, we
mm,
have a saying here in Israel that God has brought us through so many crises. And in
mm,
the end, it was only God that could do what he did to save us.
yeah, yeah, amen,
So,
amen to that.
listen, Netanyahu is going to be giving two speeches, a number of speeches in the States on the
Yes,
24th of July. I really don't know. I mean, if I knew the date of the war with Lebanon, I wouldn't be able to say it. But what I'm saying is he's coming to the States on the 24th.
mhm,
The war with Lebanon supposedly has been decided upon, and it'll happen around
right,
the 24th, either just before or just after.
yeah,
So we're watching very carefully.
yeah,
The premise in Israel is that Biden's whole foreign policy is completely fallacious, and that he
yeah,
should not be doing what he's doing and
it's
giving money
disgusting.
to all these terrorist organizations and to
Yeah,
Iran. So it might be that Netanyahu, either before his speech on the 24th of July or after his speech on the 24th of July, might decide to attack Iran and Hezbollah, and then everyone will say, "Oh, you're interfering in America's elections." But America is famous, or shall I say, infamous, for interfering in Israel's elections. So
yes, yeah, yeah,
he might go
absolutely.
to Washington and just say, "Hey, listen, Iran is the bad guy here, the spoiler, and they're spoiling things with the proxies against Israel, and so something might happen. I don't know. We're here. We are bracing ourselves
Mm,
for missile attack from Lebanon and Iran. We have generals who are saying, forget about Iran, forget about Lebanon, just go for Iran, because they're the ones responsible for all the trouble.
yeah,
So we have to watch Lebanon, we have to watch Iran.
yeah,
Then also the questions are, when will our laser weaponries be up and running to take out the
yes,
masses and masses of missiles that will be
yeah,
fired at us from Iran and from the proxies?
yeah.
I want to disagree with you.
Oh,
I love my son. My son is always disagreeing with me, so it's always very challenging. Yes.
First of all, I want to agree with my father that we don't know anything. We don't know what's going to happen. We're all connected to the news, but the news obviously is a type of media that can be used to make people think a certain way or expect certain things. It's something that the Israeli government can also use to make Hezbollah in Iran think that it's going to attack or is going to attack at a certain time. Right now, what's going around in the news is that Israel is going to sign an agreement with Lebanon and reach a ceasefire. And the same thing goes for Hamas and a certain hostage deal. And so the question is, if we're going to believe that, and there's going to be such an agreement with Lebanon, the big question that is being asked is one, can we believe Hezbollah in Lebanon that they're going to retreat the Hezbollah forces to the north? Obviously not. We can't believe them. And because of that, the residents of the Upper Galilee that are now have been in hotels for about 8-9 months as refugees, will they be willing to return to their homes without a different solution to the problem in the Galilee, in the north, in a way of a full-scale war that would bring southern Lebanon under Israeli control? So that's a question that's being asked. The second question that's being asked is, what will be the solution in Gaza? Who's going to rule Gaza? Who's going to take care of the terrorism there? So you should all know that these things are in the air right now, and people are talking about a possible ceasefire and even an end to the war. My personal view is that if that is the direction of Netanyahu and the generals in the army, then possibly the problem is that there's an understanding that Israel is not ready yet to do a full-scale war with Iran and with its proxies. Keep in mind that in the past few weeks, Iran has been pumping terrorists into Syria and ammunition and weapons. The understanding is that we're talking about Afghans, Pakistani, Iraqis, Yemenite. We're talking about ground soldiers that are being moved from all around into Syria and are being and are going through their מתאמנים. איך אומרים מתאמנים? אבא? מתאמנים.
מה אתה אומר?
מתאמנים.
They are training.
They're training for a war from the Syrian front. So, things are in the air, and there's some estimates that a war will not break on July, but rather after the elections in the U.S., which brings us to
Right.
November, December, maybe even January in the winter. So the bottom line is that everything is in the air. We don't know what's going to happen.
Wow.
Abba?
So you're talking about Taliban and ISIS trained people being
Yes. I mean,
Yeah.
the Taliban are definitely sending Afghani soldiers to fight in this war, which is again an interesting thing because Iran is Shiite and the Taliban are Sunni. But I think that what's uniting all these forces is the understanding that if an all-out war will break between Israel and Iran, there's a good chance of taking Israel down. And so many believe that many Muslims believe that this is the war to participate in, and the more the merrier. So what the reports I'm reading on open sources is that that there are on a daily basis buses, tens of buses, maybe hundreds of buses of Muslim warriors from Yemen, from Afghanistan, from Pakistan, that are going into Syria, possibly even into Lebanon. Iran is pumping weapons into these countries as well. Everybody's getting ready for something.
Wow.
The question is, when is it going to happen? And will it happen, like my father says, in July after Netanyahu returns to Israel? Or will it happen later because everybody wants to be as ready as possible for such a war? And Israel needs to stock up on weapons, to develop new weapons in order to face the threat of drones and missiles and so on and so forth. And that's it. So But
Wow.
you know, other than that, the IDF, like my father said, is doing an amazing job in Gaza, and because the plan of Hamas was to drag Israel into a guerrilla warfare, where Israel establishes permanent presence in the Gaza Strip, and Hamas is coming out of these holes in the ground, killing Israeli soldiers and vanishing. The Israeli government and the Israeli army understood that, and that's why they are not. They're conquering areas and leaving them, and going into a mode of doing raids in Gaza instead of staying and
Yeah.
basically becoming, as we say in Israel, ducks in a rifle range. And so that's right now the situation. There's a lot of intelligence coming in from Palestinian captives in Gaza that are giving the IDF all the information they need about the tunnels, where the commanders are, where the control centers are. And so, like my father said, it's going to take several weeks to continue this treatment of the terrorism infrastructure. But in the long run, the question now is who's going to control Gaza? And there is a disagreement between the generals, the Minister of Defense, and the left wing in Israel that doesn't want to control Gaza, that wants to give it to foreign powers. And contrary to that, the right wing believes that the only solution is settling Gaza and applying full Israeli control over Gaza like it was before the Oslo agreements. And so you have that disagreement, and right now the leading position is that Israel should be giving it to the control of the Arab countries and Egypt and the Palestinian Authority, which is totally crazy. But
Yeah.
that's the situation.
Okay, thank you.
I
Can I
still
just
don't
ask something
understand.
else?
I still don't understand what my son disagrees with me. I think we agree on everything.
I disagree with you that the war will happen in July. I think that there's a
Okay.
I think that there's a good chance that the war will happen possibly even months after July, because Israel needs more time to get the ammunition, to get the weapons. And you know, another thing I read today was that Britain and France, which are now ruled by the extreme left, are going to be boycotting ammunitions from Israel, and Britain is actually going to support the arrest warrant for Netanyahu if he visits Britain. So right now there are several countries from the West that are boycotting Israel and not sending weapons and ammunition. And there's the forecast is that it's going to grow, that there are going to be more and more countries like that are going to boycott Israel. So Netanyahu said we're going to fight with our fingernails if needed, but Netanyahu needs to take advantage of the coming weeks and months to prepare the army for such a war, in a reality where more and more countries are boycotting Israel.
Yeah. Well, it's a big worry. We don't know what this new government, shall we say, if you can call them that, are going to do. Obviously, we know that previously the UK has sent fighter jets, and I think France sent a couple. I may have that wrong, but for all intents and purposes, the people they're aligning with them are, you know, as Avi said earlier, the Minister of Justice is just a joke to us. They say we don't tolerate anti-Semitism in our party, and yet he's appointing people who clearly are anti-Semites. So, and they did mollycoddle the Islamic vote here telling them that if they voted for Labour, they would recognise Palestine as a state. But it's really sobering times, and you know what's happened in France is also a massive concern too, because we had a meeting here a couple of weeks ago with a representative from Ebenezer. You heard of that ministry?
Of course.
They helped with the exodus of the Jews out from Russia back to Israel. And we think that because we sit in between the UK and France in these islands here in the Channel waters, that the south coast of England and the Channel Islands, we possibly will, well, we think we will, we feel that God has shown us this, that when the Jews have to flee out of France, we're going to have to receive them and help them get to Israel. So we don't know what the climate's going to be like, because around that time with this change in government, it makes it more difficult, because we would need ships and boats. And yeah, a number of us have had the same dream about boats and ships in the Channel. We really know that we're going to have a network across the south coast and of England. So there are groups around, but it's going to take a lot of planning and money and stuff to, you know, to effecate this to help the Jews that will be fleeing from France, from Europe, because hopefully we're going to be a safe haven for them, and we need our government to be on board with us. So we see ahead that there's a lot to be done. So yeah, the times really, you know, we're praying for you out there. It's good to have these updates to know how to pray and what to pray for. Wish we could do more. But
Thank you.
you're
Thank
on
you
our
very
hearts.
much.
Bless
By
you.
the way, I have to tell you something. I'm a
Yeah.
very frustrated man.
Yeah.
Because I'm 35 years working primarily in the churches in the States, and I see the hatred, not in the churches, God forbid, but the hatred rising up against the Jews from the Muslims. There are 30 million Muslims in America. Nobody wants to discuss the numbers. I discuss the numbers, and I prove it. There are many militia people who are neo-Nazi types who hate the Jews. And then there are the Black Lives Matter people, and they hate the Jews. They're funded and founded by the Islamic Jihad. And then there's Antifa, and you have Antifa in France. Wreaking havoc
rioting.
in spaces there. And very few American Jews really are thinking of coming to Israel. Very few. England, very few. France, very few. But I feel like, you know, it's like a lady giving birth. The pain gets worse and worse and worse, and you don't see the baby yet. And then all of a sudden the baby pops out. And so, you know, I feel like all of you who are watching and talking with me and with my son and trying to reach out to people in the churches and different Jewish and Christian groups, at one stage, all of a sudden, there's going to be a very, very great turnout. And Israel's population will double and triple, I believe.
Well, I'll keep you posted.
Keep praying, keep standing with us, and be ready for whatever's coming. As it stands,
we need to be
coming
ready.
down the pipe.
Thank you, Avi.
Thank you, dear.
God
Hope
bless.
to see you in Jersey one of these days.
Yeah, that would be great.
Good,
That would be great. Thank you.
good. Pastor Glenn, where were you? I haven't seen you until now. You have to unmute. Yeah,
I'm here.
good.
Appreciate what you're doing, sharing what's going on. I would like to hear a little bit more summary, though, on what you think the future of Europe is looking like. Is Europe going to become an Islamic state?
Well, what they're saying in Israel, the commentators here, is that it looks like a disaster from our perspective in France and in England, even in Germany and Italy. But what I think is going to happen is there's going to be some kind of an awakening among the Christians. And I hate to use the word civil war, but if the Christians really care about their countries in Europe, they're going to have to stand up and fight. The Muslims are ready to fight, the Christians are not, so the Christians lose. So I think that what the commentator said here is this is a sign of the beginning of the end for the Muslims in Europe. I don't know if it's true, but there's going to be a falling out between the Muslim invaders and the Christian hosts who have been so kind to these people and only get hatred in return.
Do you think the Olympic events in France coming up are going to be a opportunity for Islam to gain greater attention to their cause?
Well, yes, I think that what we will be seeing is, you know, there was something, I don't mean to try to be funny or anything. You know me, I'm never funny. But they were saying that they're having the soccer tournaments now in Europe. And so they're saying that if the French win and the Moroccans lose, there's so many Moroccans in France that they will riot and burn cars and burn down buildings and create complete havoc. Now, if the Moroccans win and the French lose, the Moroccans will still burn everything down because they're celebrating the destruction of the Christians. So no matter how the French look at it, they are in the target sites of these fanatic invaders, these Muslims. Listen, Islam has a 1,400-year history of invasion of Europe, and they're very proud and they don't give up. I don't think it's going to happen yet exactly in America. I think, for example, in America, the Muslim money and the influence peddling, this is what the Muslims are seeking at this time, to do as much as they can to buy out the leaders without a civil war. But France is in big trouble. England, I don't know if England is in big trouble of a civil war, but it could happen. There are leaders in Europe, like, and you know who I'm talking about in Hungary, Viktor Orban, who's actually drawing closer to Russia because he's anti-Islamic. And, you know, the Russians try to be nice to the Muslims, but the Russians have a long history of warfare, 1,000-year history of warfare with the Turks. Poland, Czech Republic, Italy now is pro-right-wing. The Baltic republics are right-wing. So, you know, where there are no Muslims, there's no terrorism, and they're not allowing them in. So I think in Italy, there'll be a division between those who let them in and pay for it and those who don't let them in. And we have to just watch where the riots are taking place and the cars are being burned and the cities being burned. I don't think you'll see that just yet in the States. You know, there's something very interesting they said about Michigan, that Michigan, the Muslims won the election, but then when the LGBT came with their flags, the Muslims immediately tore down all the flags of the LGBT and said, we don't tolerate any of that nonsense. So the LGBT are just useful idiots for the Muslims in every state in America.
Avi, this is Elizabeth.
Hi, Elizabeth.
How are you? I
Good
wanted
watching you.
I wanted to comment on what let me see, Angela said about them having to be prepared to help in England to help with the ships and everything to help with the Jewish people that are fleeing and returning them back to Israel or helping them. And we had a man come and visit us several years ago. His name was Stephen Burks, and he was traveling throughout the United States and actually forewarning us of these times when the Christians would be very instrumental and very involved in helping the Jewish people in our country hide. And he was even shown places in the United States where they had a safe place. And also the ships. There's a company that's not known he couldn't put the name out there, but we're preparing to be available to help the Jewish people flee from the United States even when the time came. And he discussed that probably 8 years ago with us at Bait. And he was going around. He's also gone to Israel, and he's gone around the country and visited other countries, even in England. I don't know if she met him there, but he was telling people how we were going to have to get prepared to help and harbor people to save them and get them back home. So
I have no doubt that many Jews are going to be going home to Israel. And actually, many Christians who are married to the Jews are going to come home also. So I wouldn't be surprised if God works in very strange ways, using the support of Christian believers with air travel or maritime travel. I think that many Jews are going through a revolution in their thought now. And so if we can get more and more Christians and more Jews to talk to each other and work together, then I think that would be the real answer to what God is doing with the Muslim minorities in Europe and the US and Canada.
Over 30 years ago, a man called Steve Lytle, I don't know if any of you ever heard of him. You all look
Sure.
younger. Steve Lytle, he wrote a book called Exodus 2. And it was
Right.
also the preparation. Did you ever hear, Avi? It was.
Yes. I think I
It
met
was
him.
done. It was to get the Jews out of Russia at the time and they were doing the same thing. They had all across all the different nations. I don't even remember them now. I was looking for that book a few months ago. Steve Lytle, Exodus 2, and it's a repeat. You know, it was organizing Christians across nations to just deliver them from Russia and wherever. And they had each group in each nation did not know about the other groups. It was amazing.
Right.
God spoke to them, and then little by little they started somehow connecting. And that's, Steve Lytle wrote that book, and it became where they became a group. So little by little, as it gets out there, they have to connect with each other somehow.
Well,
So
again, the question is, does God want this to happen? And if God wants this to happen, it's going to happen. And how is it going to happen? I believe in a Judeo-Christian alliance. And again, that's the underlying reason for my Bible Block party. And, like, I'm 75. I don't know how long God is going to keep me alive. But as long as God keeps me alive and I'm breathing, I'm going to keep working for this goal of Judeo-Christian alliance and bringing everyone home to Israel. I'll also go on record as saying that I believe that we're going to need a massive immigration. So we have the people, Jews and Christians, to settle Gaza, to settle Lebanon. We cannot give Gaza back to anyone again. We cannot give Lebanon back to anyone again. Every time we get attacked, we have manifest destiny. And manifest destiny means we take the ground and we settle it. And I believe we're going to turn the whole Middle East green with, the solar energy and water desalination. There's so much that Israel is going to be doing. And, everybody talks about Genesis 12:3, which says, I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. But it goes on and it says, and that all the nations of the world will be blessed through Abraham's seed. And so I think we are living particularly precisely at a time as this. So I'm very, very, very happy to be alive at this time and that we're all together here on the Zoom. Okay, well, if there are no other questions, I've got to start getting ready for the Zoom with GLC television, which is in a few minutes. So I love you all, and I thank Lori again and again and again for having initiated this Zoom and for being the hostess with the mostest. Did you hear that, Lori?
I heard, and it's my privilege for sure.
Thank you. Love you very much. And so, God willing, we'll meet in a week again.
Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, y'all, to everyone, and be in
Bye-bye.
touch. Be in touch. Hopefully, this will be posted by Aaron on YouTube again.
Thank you, Avi.
Okay, see y'all.
Thank you.
Bless
See
you.
you.